Welcome back, everyone. And I am so excited today to have Carol Boston with us. And Carol, if you want to come on, click your camera and your microphone, and that will bring you on. Awesome.
Did that work?
It worked.
Awesome.
Now, you guys should have gotten a handout
Yes.
with the emails that I sent out. If you did not get the handout, go to the chat, find me, send me your email address, and I will send you her handout by email. All right, so Carol today is going to be talking about how to use empowering questions to convert more prospects into sales. And I don't know about you guys, but you know what? Selling sometimes is hard. And when you get those objections, you're like, I don't know what to do, right? So Carol's going to be talking about that today. Now, Carol Boston is the CEO of CB Accelerator. She's also an ex-collegiate and professional tennis player, business growth strategist, leadership coach, and award-winning speaker who has spoken at Kaiser University, American Express, and the Women's Executive Club. So welcome, Carol, and I will let you loose to share what you have for us today.
Thank you so much. And for those of you who've not gotten the handout, I'm not going to use slides. I like things to be interactive. And so I want you to please download it because you're going to be able to take away some valuable information and you're going to be able to write down on there some great takeaways. My goal every time I get in front of an audience, depending on the length of time I have, is that you walk away with at least 1 to 3 tools that you can implement right away to be more successful. Today, we only have 30 minutes, so you will get 1 tool. I'm just going to get you up, able to choose to take action on it as soon as you leave here today. To learn really how to do empowering questions, it's probably a week-long course. It's at least a 3-day course. And Kim made that comment to me the other day, so I've really tried to narrow it down and tighten it up for you. Voltaire said, "Judge a man not by his answers. You judge him by his questions. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of conversations you have." Yes? And the quality of conversations is determined by the quality of questions that you ask. So if you want better better answers, you must ask better questions. Questions direct our focus. Yes? They influence our mind. They determine what we perceive, what we experience, and what we're trying to manifest. Think about this. We don't describe what we see. We see what we describe. That might be an aha for a lot of people. That's why we only want to ask questions that we really want answers to. Einstein wrote his theory of relativity by asking this question every day. What would happen if I wrote a light beam? Walt Disney had a question he asked every day to create everything he created in the entertainment world. His question was, how do I create the happiest place on earth today? Are you asking yourself those kinds of questions? Not only in your life, but when you go into that sales or that enrollment call. How did I get in front of you today, and why am I so interested in empowering questions? I spent 27 successful years in corporate America in sales, ATT, Sprint, and paychecks, sold over $70 million, walked across the stages, got the awards. I thought I had it made. I mean, I could do this in my sleep, right? Then I got a call that day. They told me they were cutting my territory by 80%. I'm like, 80%? I've been working this territory for 5.5 years. A friend whispered in my ear about a small opportunity with a small company. And even though I love large companies for structure, I went. Not only did they hire me, they gave me a director title, and they doubled my base salary plus commissions. I thought, this is the bomb. I negotiated a vacation up front because I'd already paid for it. So 6 weeks I am into this job on vacation, staying in touch with my CEO like a good employee, right? And I got an email asking myself for an opinion. So I responded. And he didn't respond back right away. And I waited and I waited. And 12 hours later, 9 o'clock Saturday night, there goes my phone. Ding. Carol Boston, you got mail. And here's what it said. It said, Carol, comma, that's what you really think? And it had 5 question marks behind it. And it said, don't bother coming into this office on Monday when your vacation is over. You are done here. I thought, oh my God. I just got fired in an email for having an opinion. Came back to Florida, very next day, had an interview. Long story short, I interviewed all over this country, was flown 3rd, 4th, 5th interviews, no job. And I thought, how ironic that I closed all those sales in corporate America and I can't even close a deal to get myself a job. I was depleting my 401k, and faith is my foundation. So that's where I go, especially when I'm at a crossroads. So in my prayer time, many months into this, I said, God, yeah, I really did yell. I said, you know I'm not cut out to be an entrepreneur. I do not want to own my own business. You got to help me find a good job. 2 weeks to the day from that prayer, I got an email from a woman. I met her one time at a conference for 30 minutes, out of state, and out of the blue, she gifts me a $3,500 ticket to go to Los Angeles to study at Guerrilla Business School. Now, Guerrilla Business School is a foundational school for entrepreneurs. So you see, my God has a sense of humor. So I figured, well, what I'm doing isn't working, and I don't know what I don't know, and off I went to California. One of the very first things I learned, which I can't get into today, but I want you to write it down, is you can't read the label when you're inside the jar. And we're all inside a jar. That's why I believe we all need a coach, somebody who can help us see things from the outside in. One of the key things that hit me at this particular training was the amazing power of empowering questions. I mean, I was stunned. I learned a lot about communication, and I decided I was going to master them. I use them not only in my own life, I use them with my clients, and I teach on them back in corporate America. And that was in 2015 that I did this. So this is not something, I'm not even going to tell you I'm a master. It's not something that you're going to master overnight. It is something that is simple, because simple is doable, but it's not necessarily easy. I want you to look at your handout, please. Who knows what an empowering question is? If I raise my hand sometimes, it's because I really like being in front of an audience and getting that feedback. So feel free to put something in the chat here for me. And if you have a question, please put it in the chat. Kim's going to let me know at the end. Empowering questions cause you to ponder. They allow you to be curious. They open awareness that you didn't have. They might awaken new ideas. Everybody's heard of the Oprah aha moment, right? Like, boom, there it was. But one of the key things they do is they allow you then, instead of focusing on your problem, right? They will bring you possibilities that you've never even considered. How expansive is that? Put some of these things down on your page so that you remember them. They help you gather information. They help you understand, this is critical, they help you understand another's mindset. What do I mean by that? These questions allow you not only to see what you're trying to do, but they allow you to see how others perceive what you're trying to do. How would you like to have a tool that could help you get somebody else on the same page as you faster and with less resistance? And that could be in a sales call. It can be with your spouse or your significant other. It can be with your children. Because let's face it, folks, we're all selling every day, all the time. They help you clarify meaning, and clarity gives you power. The point of power is always in the present moment. How many of you walked away from a conversation and said, oh man, I wish I had asked that, right? Because then it's too late. You're out of the conversation. Here's a writer downer for you. Somewhere on that page, I want you to write this down. What am I doing to get clarity on the real reason I got an objection in my sales call? Whether it's a sales call, it's an enrollment call, it's in corporate America, you're a coach, a service provider, you're always enrolling. What am I doing to get clarity? This is when you're in the meeting. What am I doing to get clarity on the real reason I just got an objection? Here's another critical factor. Write this down. They take the emotion out of the conversation. We're going to talk about that more a little bit later. They transform our challenges into possibilities. Here's a key one, folks. They allow you to see who's really in resistance. Is it you? Or is it them? Because so often we want it to be them. They start with the words what, how, who, sometimes where, but never, never, never does an empowering question start with why. Why brings in defensiveness. Think about it. How many of you have children and you've asked your child, why did you do that? And the first thing they do is they get defensive. When you bring in defensiveness, you bring in the ego. When you bring in the ego, you bring in emotions. Here's another writer downer for you somewhere on that page. When emotions go up, intelligence goes down. Now, this is true for every human being, and it's true whether you choose to judge the feeling as negative or positive. Think about this. How many times have you said or heard somebody say, man, I wish I hadn't have said that, but I was so angry, right? But think about that lady who goes to Las Vegas to have a great weekend. She's having a blast. She wakes up the next morning, got a ring on her finger, and don't know who that is in bed, right? Now, she was having what we call a good emotion. But once again, her emotions were out of control, so her intelligence went down. Now, when you get prepared for a sales call, you're going to prepare in two areas, and we're going to talk about these questions. You want to have questions that you create in preparation for the call, and these questions are more about you, and I'm not talking that you do them 5 minutes before you walk in. Plan a week in advance. You got a big sale you're working on, plan a month in advance, and you're going to say these out loud over and over, but you have to craft them with power, okay? Now, there's many steps in the sales call. Perhaps the very first thing you're doing is making a cold call. You don't know anything about this company except their name and their phone number. So the first thing you do is what? You set the intention. And your intention is not to get a sale, is it? It's not possible. You don't even know the decision maker's name. So you set the intention to get this decision maker's name, and you craft the questions around that you're asking yourself before you make the call. Now, you're asking these, but you're asking them to the universe. And you're telling the universe, I'm open to something that I've never done before. I'm open to seeing things that are outside my jar. So perhaps you might ask yourself, what one thing can I say to this gatekeeper to get the name of that decision maker easily with no resistance? Think about it. Start putting those kind of questions out there. The second area is that you would develop questions for yourself and your prospect that happen inside the area of the actual call. Today, we're going to focus there, and we're going to focus on what you do or what you can do when you get an objection inside the sales call. Think about this. Language, both our internal and our external language, frames all of our relationships. Now, remember, our relationships are only as good as our conversations. And what did we say earlier? Our conversations are only as good as the questions that we ask. Empowering questions will allow you to have conversations by design and not by default. That's another writer downer for you. How many of you would like to design your conversations to get that win-win way more often? I know I would, right? As human beings, research shows that we have 60,000 thoughts a day. How many of you knew that? You have 60,000 thoughts a day. Now, here's a sobering piece of information. 95% of those thoughts are the exact same thing you thought yesterday. If you're having a bunch of disempowering thoughts, it becomes a cycle, right? It's just cyclical. That's why we only want to ask questions that we want answers to, because the quality of those questions determines the quality of our response. And when we ask disempowering questions, we can actually get an answer that isn't true. How's that possible? What if I said, why can't I ever lose weight? Now, there's a lot of presuppositions in there, and we don't have time to go into those, but every statement that you're going to build empowering questions around has embedded presuppositions. But let's just look at this one real quickly. Why can't I ever lose weight? What if the answer came back as because you eat like a pig? Now, that's not necessarily true. There's a lot of people that battle weight issues that don't eat like a pig. It was a disempowering question for several reasons. One, it started with why. Number two, can't I ever, which means you've never been able to even lose a pound, right? The brain, the subconscious, doesn't hear that not. It takes it out of the equation. So in three ways, this question is totally disempowering, and you can get an answer that is completely untrue. Now, I work on a daily basis, whether it's with my clients, for myself, in my business, with outside relationships, to ask myself very specific questions. And yes, I write them down. Now, I don't always say them out loud, but that's very effective, especially when you're starting it in the beginning. And in the beginning, you want to say them out loud in front of the mirror in the morning, before you touch your cell phone, before you talk to your spouse or your kids. Get up 2 minutes early. Come on, you can do it. And right before you go to bed at night, out loud in front of the mirror, see how they feel. See which ones are resonating with you and which ones are not resonating with you. But you need them to be specific, and they will empower you to communicate more effectively. They'll give you greater influence. They can inspire action. And perhaps even one day, they will help you close deals right on the spot. Now, this process of learning how to ask empowering questions is a bit like learning how to drive a stick shift car. Come on. Is everybody old enough to have ever tried to drive a stick shift car? It's a little bumpy, isn't it? Same thing with empowering questions. It's a little bit bumpy. But start to put them into practice and it will get easier. I encourage you to do it without judgment and not be looking for it to be perfect. Now, the backbone, you might want to write this down, another writer downer. The backbone of empowering questions is to be a good listener. To be a good listener and to seek first to understand. And no, it's not that easy. But when you begin to implement this, it will get easier. Now, it's going to take you out of your comfort zone. It is. Here's a writer downer for you. I only grow outside of my comfort zone. Write that down. I only grow outside of my comfort zone. Otherwise, I'm sitting in mediocrity, right? Things are either growing or dying. Nothing's really stagnant. Stick with it. Here's the thing. When I started bumbling through this the first time, I would be stopping right in the middle of a sales conversation and pausing, trying to think of what would be an empowering question. And that's okay. The other person is probably thinking you're just taking time to come up with what you want to ask. There's no judgment there. The judgment's only going to come from you, right? So I encourage you, no judgment around this. One of my mentors, Keith Cunningham, said, anything worth doing, it's worth doing poorly the first time. Think about that. Then you do it again, you get a little better. You do it again, you get a little better. So look on your page there. We're going to talk about 3 steps to crafting empowering questions. The first step, it must be stated in the positive. The brain, the subconscious, does not discern the word not. Let's go back to our weight question. If I keep telling my brain, I don't want to gain weight, I typically gain weight because the brain thinks I want to gain weight. It doesn't hear the word not. It can't negate. It follows instructions. We create as we speak. Think about that, folks. We really have to watch our language. We said earlier they began with what, how, who, sometimes where, and never ever why. And the third thing is they create momentum. How do we create momentum? If I gave you a statement and I said, I want to be a good salesperson, what does that presuppose? Think about it. I want to be a good salesperson. It presupposes that you aren't good. That's not empowering. But if you said, I want to be a better salesperson, it presumes that you're already good. To make it more powerful, you would say, I want to be an even greater salesperson today. And you make it specific and time bound. Now that is an empowering statement that you can then craft empowering questions around to be able to make progress toward that goal. Now here's the caveat. When you put an empowering question out there, you cannot be attached to the outcome. Well, what does that mean? I had a lady in HR at American Express and she goes, Carol, I have to meet my goals. I'm not saying that we don't have goals. I'm saying you can't be attached to how it shows up. If we're in our jar and we're in a tunnel and we think the only way to get from point A to point B is a straight line, we're in trouble, because that's how we're going to get the most resistance. If we have time at the end, Kim, remind me to give them a little story about what it means to not be attached to the outcome. You're going to put these out to the universe. Your job is not to figure them out. Your job is to be consistent to putting them out there and be open to how the answer shows up. In his book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, Stephen Covey tells us, seek first to understand and then be understood. Now, the difference with empowering questions is that second half. That then to be understood is not about you trying to get somebody else to understand you. It's about you understanding you. Because more often than people want to admit, we're the problem. We're the ones that are in resistance. And most of the time, we don't even know it, because this is just the way we've been doing it for 30, 40, 50, however many years. Does that make sense? So we're going to use these questions to better understand ourselves, as well as understand others and where they're coming from. Let's talk about objections. Earlier, we said there's pre-call and then there's during the call. The ones on your sheet are going to be during the call. But before we get there, I want to give you a few that are in the pre-call. And Kim, I'm going to ask you to keep me in line. I did not turn my stopwatch on, so let me know when I have about 5 minutes left, please, ma'am. Think about this. You're getting ready. You have the sales appointment. You know you're going there, and you have that opportunity. Or you're a coach. You're in an enrollment or a consultant. Yes? Here are some pre-call empowering questions that you can start asking yourself days in advance on a regular basis before you ever have the meeting. Here's one for you. Maybe you want to flip the page over and write some of these down. This is pre-call planning. How can I provide even more value in that call? How can I provide even more value? Presupposing that you already provide great value. What one thing can I say that will move that sale forward very quickly on that day? What's one thing I can say? You could also take that and say that to yourself even as you're walking into the appointment. What one thing can I say that will move my sale forward very quickly today? You're only looking for one thing. You want it to be specific. How can I say it so that he or she can hear me? How many of them said, I don't know why they don't understand me. I'm being so clear. Are you speaking your prospect's language? That's a whole nother teaching, because you can use these questions to ascertain the dominant learning language of your client or prospective client. Are they auditory? Are they visual? Are they kinesthetic? Or are they audio digital? And then you'll know in the moment how to frame your questions. If we have time, I can give you an example of one of those. How can I create even more urgency today so they take action? I wish I could see y'all's faces. Put it in the chat if this is making sense to you, if these are some powerful questions. I'm going to give you one that I added something to that you can add that even brings more enjoyment into what you're doing. What specifically has to happen for me to sign this deal today, or you could say right now, comma, while I'm having fun doing it? How about that? You can create an empowering question and have fun the whole time that you're doing it. You're telling the universe, you're telling God, I'm open to something new. I'm open to getting out of my comfort zone and trying something new. But can you make sure that I have fun while I'm doing it? Pretty cool, huh? Now, let's look on your list, on your sheet, I'm sorry, and we're going to talk about what happens during the call. Now, this is not going to be easy at first, because oftentimes, actually, statistics show that every human being will do one of 4 things when they get resistance or run into an objection. They will blame, they will minimize, they will deny, or they will justify. Let's go back to the example of your child. Why did you do that? The first thing they're going to do is say, I didn't do it, Susie did it, right? They're going to blame somebody else. The second thing they might do is, I didn't do it. I have no idea what you're talking about. Right? Think about this. I know you people that have kids are laughing right now because it's so true. Well, Why did you do that? Well, I had to spill the milk because the glass was too tall and it wasn't my fault. And I was trying to be big. And they're going to justify why there's milk all over the table, right? Or perhaps they're just going to minimize it and say, it's not that big a deal. And we all do it. We don't want to bring that energy into the call when we get an objection. What if someone says to you, that's just too much money. I don't have that kind of money. Raise your hand if you've gotten that objection before. Instead of getting upset, how many of us have tried to justify in our sales careers or in our coaching or consulting, whatever we do, we then jump in and try to justify why we're worth that much money? How about you get curious with empowering questions? Because if someone says to you, it's too much money, or I don't have that kind of money, the first thing we need to realize is we didn't give enough value up front. They don't see the value. So get curious. Don't let your emotions come up. Recognize them. Say thank you for sharing. And start thinking of some empowering questions to do to get clarity on what that really means. You can even ask yourself, well, what else could that mean? What else could that mean? On your page, you'll see I gave you a few of these. You could ask, what one benefit would have to be added to my offer to make it more valuable to you today? How many of you have thought of something like that when someone says it's too much money? 5 minutes. Thank you, Miss Kim. What one thing, when someone says, I don't have the time, what one thing that you don't enjoy doing today could you delegate or give up to find the time that you really want to invest in yourself? How about that one? How will your life change if you change how you're running your life and you create the time to invest in yourself? Here's one more when they say it's too much money. What would my plan have to look like in order for you to move forward today? Who's asking these kinds of questions? Here's the thing, folks. When you change, the world around you will change. When you start asking, my clients will tell you, their spouses notice they ask different questions. Their children communicate with them differently. When you change, the world will change around you. You have that much power. I'm going to close up here, see if there's any questions from Kim. But if you look at the bottom of your page, you can go to my calendar link and get a 15-minute complimentary call. And if you'll come to the call with the #1 challenge that you want me for free, I'll personally craft 3 to 5 empowering questions around that challenge for you. How does that sound? Make sense? Or if you think I'm someone you might want to talk to about working with you, then feel free to book a 30-minute call on my calendar. Now, what I decided to do for Kim's group today, she doesn't know this, I just thought this up this morning, is I'm going to give an extra offer. So for the first 3 people that email me, not get on my calendar, we're going to make the rules a little different. For the first 3 people that email me, my email's at the bottom. You email me the top 3 goals that you want to accomplish before December 31st of 2020, 11:59 p.m., whatever your time zone is. And under each one, you put one empowering question that you've come up with, and I'll give you a 30-minute complimentary call to put a strategy together to do that. Thank you so much for attending and giving me this time, and I hope it's
Carol,
been of value
just before you go, I tried to make sure that everybody had the handout, but what's your email just in case they don't have your handout?
It's Carol, C-A-R-O-L, at Carol Boston, Boston just like the Red Sox or baked beans or Tea Party, Carol at carolboston.com.
Awesome. Now,
go connect with me on LinkedIn.
We have about 3 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions for Carol? You will be able to go speak with her at the table afterwards. So, but if you do have any questions now, we can take it.
If not, and somebody wants me to give you a quick example of what it means to not be attached to the outcome,
sure,
I'll give you a real quick story. Remind you of that. Kim, do we have any questions? Yeah, do we have any questions? If not, about 1.5 years ago, I knew I was going to speak at the Tower Club, Fort Lauderdale, big business club. I was going to speak to 3 different organizations, all in the month of November. Now, you might can tell from my energy that I'm not a stand behind a podium kind of girl. And they had a podium mic or they had a handheld mic, and I didn't want to do either one of those. So I went to the Tower Club and I said, what else is possible? One of the things we didn't get to today is that is the most empowering of all empowering questions. It's a writer downer. What else is possible? And you don't try to figure the answer out. So I said, what else is possible? And they said, well, that's how we've done it for 70 years. So I said, well, what else is possible? And they said, Carol, that's what we always do. We have a podium mic or a handheld mic. And I said, well, what else is possible? Now, this goes on for a little while. And finally, she goes, I'm going to have to go find out. So I said, okay, good. A week later, folks, a week later, I'm at the Tower Club testing their very first lavalier mic ever in 70 years of the history of this club. Now, had I gone into that meeting and said, I have to have a headset mic, I might not have gotten a solution to my problem. I wasn't attached to the solution. All I wanted was not to have to hold a mic to my face, because as you can tell, I use my hands. I like to be connected with my audience, and I didn't want to stand behind a podium. So I got an answer. Does that make sense? Your job is not to figure it out. It's to be open and not judge how it shows up. Oftentimes, folks, because we can't read the label when we're inside a jar, we have opportunities sitting right next to us that we can't even see. And they're right there.
That is incredible.
That's why I believe we all need a coach, right?
Yeah.
Kim,
you know,
I've
heard this story before, but every time you say it, it just smacks me in the face and goes, Cam, you got to start asking what else is possible. So thank you so much, Carol.
Yes.
This has been amazing. You guys are all welcome to go see her at her table, which is one of the side sponsor tables. And in about 15 minutes, I will be coming on to do my presentation. So thanks so much, Carol. You did an amazing job.
Thank you.